Hi everyone, Materim here again with another RPG Talks book review. And today we're going to be targeting the Complete Book of Humanoids by Bill Slavicsek, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This was published by TSR in 1993, and this is another one of the Player's Options Rules Supplement Brown books. I'm actually not entirely sure what order we're in. I think this is the 10th or 12th one, but I'm not 100% on that. I got a lot of use out of this book in my early gaming life. And in fact, I used this book quite a bit as a litmus test for players to really kind of help separate those who would be really good role players from those who are really just interested in some hack and slash. And as we talk about the book, I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. But I definitely think it's a solid read, and it's got a lot of information in it. So let's go ahead and get into it. So for the general book overview, the book is split up into 7 chapters and an introduction. There's also an end part at the end with some important tables, that sort of thing. The tables start us off, the introduction starts us off with some general thoughts about what humanoids are, what classifies as a humanoid, and sort of the purpose of this book. And the in short of that purpose, and I'm quoting the book here, is to design and role play your own monsters. So I guess we'll be looking at it, trying to focus on that way, on whether they accomplish that or not, and kind of rate the book from that. So we go first into Chapter 1, and Chapter 1 talks about how to create your humanoid characters. Talks briefly about generating your ability scores, that it just works just like the book does, so on and so forth. It's kind of there's one good table in here that gives you the level maximums for your different class groups. But the part that I like the most about Chapter 1 is the part at the end called adding humanoids to the campaign. It goes into a couple of different models of how to put these new humanoids in the campaign, and it's detailed enough with little blurbs of in-character story to help a new DM kind of understand how, or at least get some ideas on how to add a new monster character to a current ongoing game. So I thought that was very, very nice. We then go into Chapter 2, which comprises most of the book. This is the humanoid races, and it goes into a breakdown of each race that it presents. And for the most part, I'm looking at this, pretty much every humanoid race that's represented in the Monstrous Manual is pretty much represented here in this book. There's a lot of options. It goes through the ability score adjustments, some class restrictions, hit dice alignment, natural armor class, so on and so forth. Then it has a section about role-playing suggestions for each race, kind of some things to think about while you're trying to play these characters. Then it goes through special advantages, special disadvantages, monstrous traits, which I think is a very interesting addition to this. And one of the things that I used as a litmus test to determine the true role players from the non-role players is how well they played these monstrous traits. And it's not anything that, like, mechanically benefited, but for instance, the Aarakocra, the bird people, talks about how they have monstrous speech, and they make bird sounds when speaking, even when they speak the common tongue. And you'll really know your good role players that they'll take those monstrous traits and bring them into their experience with the character. But yeah, it goes through an awful lot of options here. Your standard goblins, orcs, your bullywugs, which are the frog people for those who don't know, and even things that I would argue aren't necessarily humanoid, like the centaurs, or as you see in this picture, the Wemmick, all get their write-ups, and uh, they're all pretty good. There are a few options that I think are a little crazy overpowered just in terms of what you get. But those are balanced out too by some options that really have no mechanical benefit. And this was sort of the second litmus test I always used with this book. Is you hand this book to a player who's interested in playing monsters, and your hack and slash kind of guys are going to focus on like your furball giants, your ogres, your half ogres, all the guys, your minotaurs, the ones who get really big stat bonuses. But over the years, I found that a lot of the sort of the truer role players were willing to gravitate towards the monsters like the goblins, who literally just get stat penalties, um, or some of the other sort of odd choices, um, like the mongrelman. And it's just there's just such a wealth of information and options here that there's really something for everybody in this chapter. Then we move on to chapter 3, which is humanoid kits. And this basically gives you some kit ideas for these more tribal humanoids so that you can do something to make them a little different than just being a normal fighter or just being a normal wizard. There's outlaw mages, there's the witch doctor kits, stuff like that that really can make your character's different than just being, oh look, I'm a monster doing the exact same things that the humans are doing. So I think that's kind of interesting. One I really liked is the Tramp, which is basically just this urban scavenger type person, a beggar, and it's stuff that you don't really think about for doing for these characters. But like a goblin beggar could be a really fun character, and one I've seen done once or twice to great effect. But all in all, the kits are actually pretty good. There wasn't any that jumped out at me as just being just crazy. And all in all, they do a fair job at giving a solid, different flavor to each of the classes for these humanoids. And to that end, I actually think that the kit spread here is better than in a lot of the other books that I've reviewed so far. I certainly think that there are better kit options than are in the Fighter's Handbook for the most part. Mr. Slavacek definitely seems to know what a kit should do and how to use it to provide flavor to a character rather than making it just this overriding, awesome mechanical idea. Then we go into Chapter 4, which is Humanoid Proficiencies. And basically what this is this is just adding some proficiencies that would be particularly appropriate for humanoid characters. Stuff like begging, cheese making, which was a weird one I thought. Eating and drinking proficiency, which sounds stupid, but it's the idea of like the drinking proficiency helps you resist getting drunk from drinking alcohol. The eating proficiency essentially lets you go twice as long without food. Stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure they really should fall under the category of proficiencies, but it definitely gives some new options, and for the most part, options aren't going to be bad. So then we go into Chapter 5, and this is role-playing humanoids. Now, for everybody who has seen one of my reviews so far, and I get to this chapter because they're in all of these players' books, you're probably expecting me to be like, this is the part with the least amount of help, and blah, 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 blah. I'm actually going to go the other way. I want to say this is one of the better chapters in this book because it gives you some ideas of how a humanoid is different than your sort of more accepted races. It talks about sort of the life as a humanoid, discusses tribal life a little bit, talks about social and racial disadvantages that these humanoids might have. And then it goes into a deeper discussion of the humanoid monster's traits. It also talks a little bit about complications that you can present in your campaign that are specifically sort of geared towards your humanoid characters. Like the idea of, you know what, maybe this monster's character is targeted by adventurers, and there's adventurers wanting to hunt this monster down, that sort of thing. Talks about just general fear amongst the population of this monster wandering free, that sort of thing. Just again, a list of interesting ideas for the DM to kind of help build hooks for your character. Then we go into chapter 6, which I'll be honest, reads to me sort of like a continuation of chapter 5, but there are some more mechanical bits to it, so I think that's ultimately the reason why they split it out. But it talks about utilizing superstitions to help separate your character from the more accepted races. And it's basically gives some stats on, or some mechanics on how to use positive or negative superstitions to affect the gameplay, and to represent your character as being sort of less learned and knowledgeable about the outer world than a traditional race would be. And then it gives like just a list of various things that can serve as those superstitions. Kind of neat. I certainly like the idea that they're engaging that. Not certain that I'm 100% sold on the mechanical side of it that they kind of force in. Then we go to chapter 7, the final chapter, and this is sort of rules about arms and armor, and really talks about like armor restrictions and weapon size stuff for these bigger or much smaller humanoids. There's everything in this book available from a Fremlin, which is like 6 inches tall, all the way up to a couple of the giant kin, so you definitely have to engage that. Then there is a big old list of special humanoid weapons, and I think this is great because it gives you some different options. If you really wanted to play up the whole feel of a humanoid, why not use the special racial weapons? And then the book ends basically with some size comparison charts and just a bunch of general character creation charts that I find very helpful in the game. So, general thoughts on the book. Pros. Excellent selection of new races. I think there's very little I could think of in terms of humanoids that I couldn't play from this book. Certainly nothing that immediately pops to mind out of the player's handbook, except for your really overly powerful options. Like there's no Illithids, obviously. There's no true giants, but anybody who really wants to play that kind of stuff is going a little towards the Munchkin, in my opinion, anyway. I also thought it was a large selection of decent kits. None of these kits really jumped out at me as being too powerful to be useful or overly useless. So, I mean, it's general, middle of the road, good kits for providing good flavor to your character. The role-playing section is actually useful, and for me, that's a huge standout point in terms of these Brown books. Because most of them are kind of dated, obviously focused at your very basic introduction to role-playing, and I thought it read more like an advanced discussion of how humanoids differ in role-playing from your normal races. There's also some great charts and generally nice artwork in the book. One of my favorite charts that I've used, even in games where I haven't used humanoids, is the new reincarnation chart. There is a new chart for the reincarnate spell that encompasses every humanoid in this book. So it's a D100 chart. And if you use reincarnate spells in your game, it's a must-have chart, in my opinion. Cons. There are a couple of overpowered options in terms of the races. I think that the Minotaur really gets more than he really deserves. The Ogre Mage, the Pixie, they're all really powerful. Not that you can't make a campaign where those powers are curtailed a little bit, but particularly in the case of the Pixie and the Ogre Mage, you're getting a lot of magical power, and you are paying an XP penalty to it, but from level 1 and just gaining the magical powers that you gain for those races, they can be a little overpowered. Number two, I would have liked to see more artwork, or more color artwork in the book. Um, just in general, I know I said no color artwork in the book here on my cons list, but it's not true. There's actually two pictures that I had forgotten about that I stumbled upon while I was flipping through as I was talking. Um, but I really think the color artwork is very helpful because it's very evocative. And while I like the artwork, it's generally nice, as I said in my prose. Um, the images of all of the races are just against a blank backdrop. So it's just like white square with race in it. I would have liked to see a couple of splash pages, maybe, of a really nice color artwork of some of these humanoid races. And I think that could have been very helpful in, I don't know, in just making the oomph factor of the book go up. But as you can see, very few cons I can pull, and again, I'm kind of getting nitpicky to make them. I would definitely say this book is easily a 4.5 out of 5. Really, it's only those slightly overpowered options that keep it from being a perfect score in this one. But it is definitely a book I would recommend if your players have any interest whatsoever in playing the humanoid races, or just wanting to know kind of how they think. And I'll be honest, some of the humanoid kits in here are good for non-humanoid characters. So I just think there's a lot of information that can benefit games, and this is definitely one that I would go out of my way to make sure I added to my collection if you're getting into second edition. Okay, guys, thank you for watching yet another one of my reviews. If you have different thoughts on the Humanoids Handbook, please leave them in the comments below. Also, like and subscribe, like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know what else you guys want to see. As you can see from what little of my collection you can see in this picture, I've got a lot of stuff I'm planning on going through. My ultimate aim is to literally do a review of every book and box set you see in this picture. So we've got a lot to go through, and I will try to get to everything. But if there are things you guys want me to prioritize, definitely let me know. Other than that, thank you guys for watching once again, and we'll catch you next time.